August was packed full of TCR action from all over the world. TCR Europe's opening event took place at Paul Ricard in the south of France, while the next half hour will also see us heading to Russia, Germany, Italy, Japan and the USA. Welcome to Inside the World of TCR, Episode 16. TCR Europe should have started in Spa at the end of May, but instead the series got underway over the penultimate weekend of August at Paul Ricard. With a 6-event calendar instead of the 7 originally planned, the Continental Series began 2020 with an impressive field of 24 cars. In race 1, John Filippi, driving a target competition Hyundai i30N, started from pole, but behind him, third on the grid, Dan Lloyd, once again driving a brutal fish-prepared Honda Civic, had a much better start and took the lead into turn 1 in front of Mehdi Benani. After a disappointing qualifying session, Pepe Oriola, who's tackling the full season with a brutal fish Honda Civic, made a superb start, climbing from 13th on the grid to 7th, just a few corners into the first lap. But there was bad luck for the third brutal fish Honda. Martin Rieber had to retire following an incident with Gilles Colombani on lap 1. After a difficult start, Andreas Beckmann, driving a Hyundai again in 2020, recovered positions lap after lap. This was on lap 4 when he overtook the Peugeot 308 of 2019 TCR Europe runner-up, Julien Brichet. And the Swede moved another position up the standings a few moments later when Mike Halder went wide. The young German driver was also passed by Julien Brichet and, while trying to keep the position, lost control of his car and was passed by Nicolas Bart, Matto Homola and Daniel Nage. Halfway through the race it was the Beckmann family against Pepe Oriola. Andreas, right behind the Spaniard, and Jessica, following her brother, did all they could to challenge Oriola. This was when Andreas overtook him for 7th. Soon afterwards, Pepe and Jessica clashed twice, first going into turn 15, and then again on the main straight. The second impact damaged both cars and the pair had to retire. But this was how Dan Lloyd began his 2020 TCR Europe campaign, an authoritative victory without being threatened by his rivals for the entire race. Mehdi Benani, debuting in TCR Europe and entered for the full season, achieved a terrific second place. John Filippi could have hoped for more after setting the pole, but a place on the podium is always rewarding. Teddy Claret was 4th, Nestor Girolami 5th and Jimmy Claret 6th. The happiness of Dan in the Mini Parc Fermé doesn't need any commentary. This was the first TCR Europe podium of 2020. After entering TCR Europe at the very last moment, together with his sister Michelle, Mike Halder started the second race from pole on the reverse grid. And it was a great start for the German, who took the lead in front of Sami Taoufik, the young Moroccan driver coached by Benani. While behind, Teddy Claret, who'd started 5th, was already 3rd going into turn 1. After a DNF in race 1, Tom Coronel had to pit following contact with Pepe Oriola in the early stages of race 2. While Mike Halder was building a solid lead from Taoufik, the battle for 3rd was tough. Touring car ace Nestor Girolami, a last-minute entry for this event to replace Viktor Davidovski, who wasn't able to travel because of COVID-19 restrictions, overtook Teddy Claret for 3rd. And the Argentinian then moved up to 2nd when Taoufik was given a drive-through penalty for a jump start. There was then a furious battle for P3 with 7 drivers covered by 1 second. This was when the Hyundai of Andreas Beckmann overtook Teddy Claret's Peugeot. But a couple of corners later in the first half of the Mistral Straight, the French driver reclaimed his 3rd position from the Swede. On the same lap, Julien Brichet overtook Jessica Beckmann into Beausset for 6th, but his move wasn't clean, as you can see. In the manoeuvre, the Frenchman hit the Swede and his Peugeot was damaged. Brichet tried to carry on, but he was clearly unable to keep the pace of the faster cars. The battle was even more fierce further behind. Pepe Oriola managed to pass Matteo Homola for 11th, with Michel Halder close behind and keen to take advantage of the situation. On lap 6 into Beausset, Teddy Claret slightly lost control of his Peugeot going sideways. So for Andreas Beckmann it was an unexpected gift, but there was nothing he could do. The Frenchman brilliantly managed to close the door. After putting on pressure for several laps, race 1 winner Dan Lloyd finally managed to pass Jessica Beckmann for 6th into the Virage du Pont, the last corner. Lloyd will clearly be aiming for the title, and so every point could be crucial at the end of the season. In the next corner, Jessica Beckmann was also passed by her teammate John Filippi, who was following right behind. And so, this was how 2 years after taking his maiden TCR Europe victory at Barcelona, Mike Halder returned to the top step of the podium, winning the second race of the season's opening event at Paul Ricard. It was a Honda 1-2 with guest star Nestor Girolami in second, and after a strenuous battle, Teddy Claret managed to claim his first podium in the series. Time to celebrate for Halder in the Mini Parc Fermé. Race 1 winner Lloyd kept the lead in the standings, just 1 point clear of Benani, while Girolami moved into P3 on his one-off appearance in the series. Teddy Claret and Filippi are currently placed 4th and 5th with gaps of 7 and 11 points. We spoke to Lloyd, Benani and Teddy Claret.
We made some changes to the car today. It wasn't as good as what we thought, so definitely some more work to do for Zolder. But we did a test there as well, so we're pretty confident we're going there. Like I say, I'll have 60 kilos there, so it'll be very tough. Again, carrying 60 kilos is just going to be about getting some points there as well. So yeah, it's going to be a tough season. There are a lot of competitors there. I think, you know, there are a good 7 or 8 drivers who can fight for the championship this year.
It's my first time in the car, in Audi, in this team. So I didn't race since a long time. So for sure I have to be happy, because otherwise I'm not serious about how I expect about myself. No, more than happy. Really, I hope that we can keep going. The car looks there. The team works very professionally. So I hope that we can be there as top runners in the European Championship.
Last year was our first year in TCR, so we learned a lot of things. We work really hard during winter to improve our performance on the car and on myself also. So that's a good meeting for me, and yes, I'm really happy about the result.
At the start of the opening race of TCR Germany at the Lausitzring, pole sitter Antti Buri in a Hyundai i30N hesitated, while Austrian rookie Nico Gruber, also in a Hyundai, sprinted from P3 on the grid to take the lead into turn 1. Behind the pair, Mike Halder overtook Jan Seifert for P3 during the opening lap. On lap 8, the fight for P10 between Marcel Fugel, Albert Legutko and Michel Halder resulted in the young Polish driver locking up his front wheels and ending the race in the gravel trap. The safety car then circulated for 6 laps. When racing resumed on lap 15, Mike Halder snatched P2 from Buri, while Harold Procik passed Seifert for P4. The top positions didn't change, and the final laps were enlivened by the battle for P10 between Marcel Fugel and Michel Halder, who finished in that order. For Gruber, it was an authoritative debut, winning the race in front of the experienced Halder and Buri.
Yeah, I'm speechless, you know. I have to thank for my supporters, for my sponsors, for my dad, also to Team Engstler. Without them, it would have not been possible for sure. The team made a mega job the whole weekend. And yeah, they are the reason why I'm standing here now. And yeah, I'm happy that I could give something back to them.
And this was his well-deserved reward. René Kirsch's Volkswagen Golf was on pole on the reversed grid for race 2, with Michel Halder alongside him, and it was the latter who led the field into turn 1. However, she was soon passed by Dominic Fugel and her brother Mike, dropping to 3rd. 1 lap later, Procik too passed Michel for P3. The lady driver lost another position on lap 6 when Buri passed her for P4. As Fugl was trying to pull away, behind him Mike Halder's intercooler failed, and at the end of lap 8 he pitted and retired. Race 1 winner Nico Gruber moved into 4th by the end of the race after this overtaking move on Michael Halder, who went wide into turn 1. It was a brilliant win for Dominic Fugl. Following Mike Halder's retirement, Procik and Buri were promoted to 2nd and 3rd. Gruber finished 4th, taking the lead of the championship, while Michael Halder was 5th and Jan Seifert 6th. The reigning World Touring Car Cup champion Norbert Michelisz started his 2020 season by taking part in TCR Germany at the Nürburgring. Starting from pole, the Hungarian was beaten by Harold Procik at the start, but when the Austrian was given a drive-through for a jump start, Michelisz inherited the lead and was never challenged. Down the order, Jessica Beckman and Nico Gruber came together. The Swedish ladies' Hyundai spun and collected Antti Buri's identical car. At the end of lap 7, Nico Gruber pitted and retired after the incident that had already eliminated Jessica Beckman and dropped Buri 2 laps behind. So Michelisz took the win in front of Andreas Beckman and Michael Halder, while Mike Halder, 2nd at the checkered flag, was disqualified for having disarmed the fire extinguisher of his Honda Civic while in the Parc Fermé after the race. In the second race, the field was reduced to just 13 cars, as both the Honda Civics of Mike and Michael Halder had been withdrawn as a protest against Mike's exclusion from race 1. At the start, Antti Buri took the lead from Gruber and Andreas Beckman, who was soon passed by Procik. On lap 9, Nico Gruber damaged his front suspension over the curbs and retired, which helped Procik to move into P2 and Michelisz into P3. 2 laps later, a drive-through for a jump start was handed to the leader Buri, which meant that Procik and Michelisz inherited 1st and 2nd places. Fugl finished 3rd. Dominic Fugl is now leading the championship with a 4-point gap over Procik. Jan Seifert is 3rd and Antti Buri 4th. Over the first weekend of August, TCR Italy was in Misano for rounds 3 and 4. At the start of the first race, Felice Ialmini in a Hyundai took the lead from Franco Girolami's Honda Civic, Salvatore Tavano's Cupra, which had jumped into 3rd from P6 on the grid, Marco Pellegrini and Mauro Guastamacchia, both driving Hyundais, and Brigliadori's Audi. At the beginning of the second lap into turn 1, Marco Pellegrini overtook Salvatore Tavano for 3rd. And a few corners later, Tavano was also passed by Eric Brigliadori for 4th with this move. The Audi Rs3 Lms of Matteo Poloni was the first to retire with a flat front tyre at the end of lap 2. While the leader, Ialmini, was able to create a gap, Pellegrini, running in 2nd, spun off on lap 4 and dropped from P3 to P6. 3 laps later, Mauro Guastamacchia, driving an Audi in 4th place and under pressure from Marco Pellegrini, committed a mistake as well, going wide and dropping from P4 to P7. 10 laps into the race, and Franco Girolami's pace began to fade due to tyre wear. 2 laps later, Girolami pulled up and retired, which promoted Tavano and Pellegrini to 3rd and 4th respectively. Felice Ialmini was first to take the checkered flag, but for the 2nd consecutive race was stripped of a victory. While in Mugello he was penalised because of a racing incident, this time in Misano he was excluded for a technical infringement. That meant that Eric Brigliadori inherited the victory, while Salvatore Tavano and Marco Pellegrini were promoted to 2nd and 3rd respectively. In the second race, defending champion Salvatore Tavano made a great start from P3 on the grid and moved into the lead ahead of pole sitter Michele Imberti, while Pellegrini and Brigliadori followed in 3rd and 4th positions respectively. 3 laps into the race, and this was when Pellegrini took the lead from Tavano. At the same time, Felice Ialmini climbed to P4, overtaking Ettore Carminati and Michele Imberti. Just a few moments later into turn 1, Salvatore Tavano lost 1 more place to Eric Brigliadori, who began to chase down the leader, Marco Pellegrini. 1 lap later, Franco Girolami overtook Michele Imberti for P6. After putting pressure on Salvatore Tavano for several laps, Felice Ialmini managed to pass the defending champion into turn 2 on lap 7 with this breathtaking move. Tough, but fair. On lap 9, the fight for P10 between Mauro Guastamacchia, Simone Pellegrini and Alessandro Giardelli resulted in the latter punting Pellegrini's car into a spin. Eric Brigliadori reduced the gap to Marco Pellegrini lap by lap, and finally into the last corner of the penultimate lap managed to pass him to take the lead of the race. And so, after inheriting his maiden TCR Italy victory in race 1, following the exclusion of Felice Jelmini for a technical infringement, Eric Brigliadori claimed his first actual victory in race 2. Pellegrini was second, Jelmini third, Tavano fourth, Carminati fifth and Girolami sixth. The last weekend of August then saw TCR Italy race at Imola. The first race started behind the safety car because the track was still damp after a brief shower, and Jelmini took the lead, while Damiano Reduzzi overtook Jacopo Guidetti for P2. At the end of lap 3, Igor Stefanovski's Hyundai overtook the Cupra of Salvatore Tavano for P4 on the start-finish straight. The Macedonian driver began chasing Guidetti and eventually passed him for P3 on lap 6 with this spectacular move on the grass. Soon afterwards, Jacopo Guidetti and Salvatore Tavano made contact, and the former dropped to 6th behind Eric Brigliadori, who then passed Tavano for P5. Stefanovski pushed to the limit to close the gap to Reduzzi, but went off at the Rivazza 2 bend. His Hyundai beached in the gravel, which prompted the safety car into action. During the penultimate lap, Francesco Raffaelli spun off at the chicane, and the safety car was deployed again for the final lap. That saw Jelmini cross the line ahead of Reduzzi, Brigliadori and Guidetti. Salvatore Tavano was finally classified 5th after Guastamacchia was given a 5-second penalty. Eric Scalvini won the DSG class over Michele Imberti. Just as in race 1, race 2 saw a damp track after a shower. Marco Pellegrini started from pole on the reversed grid and led the field. Behind him, Igor Stefanovski, Salvatore Tavano and Damiano Reduzzi passed Matteo Poloni, who was second on the grid. On the first lap, there was this tight battle for 6th. First, Felice Jelmini overtaking Jacopo Guidetti into Piratella. Then, Guidetti repasses. And then into the Acqua Minerale, Jelmini overtakes again. But later on at the Rivazza, after this contact between the two, Jelmini dropped to 11th. On the second lap and still on a wet track, Jacopo Guidetti managed to pass Matteo Poloni with this move into the Tosa corner. 4 corners later at the Variante Alta, Eric Scalvini's Cupra spun after a contact with Brigliadori, and Jelmini took to the grass to avoid the impact. Everyone was struggling with grip. Even Igor Stefanovski lost control of his Hyundai down the Rivazza and went into the gravel, dropping from 2nd to 6th. The Macedonian driver immediately started to recover, and this was when he overtook Matteo Poloni for 5th into Tosa. Drivers started to use every inch of the tarmac to pass their rivals, and sometimes even the grass, as here when Brigliadori checked out his Audi's suitability for cross-country rallies. 5 laps into the race, and the leader Pellegrini made a mistake at the Rivazza, going wide into the gravel and dropping to 3rd behind Tavano and Guidetti. 2 laps later into Tosa, it was Guidetti's turn to make a mistake in an attempt to pass Tavano, which dropped the Motorsport Honda to 5th. As the track dried, Tavano led from Pellegrini, Reduzzi, Stefanovski and Guidetti, when Carlotta Fedeli's Volkswagen went off onto the gravel and the safety car was deployed. Racing resumed with 2 laps to go, and Pellegrini dived inside Tavano at the Rivazza. They made contact and Pellegrini moved into the lead, while Reduzzi sealed the opportunity to pass Tavano for P2. In this eventful race, obviously, things happened right until the very last moment. On the final lap in the uphill section towards Piratella, there was a bumper-to-bumper contact between Reduzzi and Pellegrini. And finally, the former managed to pass to grab the lead. And so Damiano Reduzzi won one of the craziest TCR races seen so far in 2020. Pellegrini, second under the checkered flag, finished 8th because of a 5-second penalty for a grid infringement, which promoted Tavano to 2nd and Stefanovski to 3rd. Guidetti was 4th, Imberti 5th and Carminati 6th. Halfway through the season, Tavano now leads the championship standings with 92 points, 9 clear of Pellegrini in 2nd. Brigliadori is 3rd, Jelmini 4th, Reduzzi 5th and Carminati 6th. TCR Russia was in Kazan at the beginning of August for the third meeting of the season. Mikhail Mityev was dropped from 4th to 9th on the grid due to a penalty that resulted from an incident he'd had with Maslenikov in the previous event. At the start, pole sitter Luka Chavich and Alexi Duducarlo began fighting for the lead and ran abreast for the first half of the opening lap. And then Luka Chavich took the lead, but at the beginning of lap 2 he outbraked himself and went off at turn 1, which prompted the safety car into action. A couple of turns before the end of the final lap, Gavrilov made his move on Duducarlo. They made contact and Gavrilov went through to claim his first win of the season. Finishing second, Duducarlo still managed to jump to the top of the standings. The podium was completed by Grigory Burlutsky, Kudinov finished 4th, Mityev 5th and Bragin 6th. At the start of the second race, Ladijin took the lead from pole on the reversed grid, while Ilya Yekushevsky stalled from the second spot, which helped Andrei Maslenikov to move into P2. Behind him there was a tough scrap between Mityev, Burlutsky, Gavrilov and Rustam Kudinov that resulted in a number of clashes. Eventually Kudinov and Mityev took P3 and P4 ahead of Gavrilov and Burlutsky. On lap 14 there was contact between Luka Chavich and Kudinov, with the former going onto the gravel. They both lost several places, while Bragin and Kalmanovic advanced to P5 and P6 respectively. Gavrilov closed in on Ladijin, but the latter retained a margin of a little more than a second at the checkered flag. For Ladijin, it was his second win of the season, a haul of points that enabled him to retake the lead in the standings, 10 points clear of Alexi Duducarlo, who only finished 13th because of mechanical issues. The Tilk-designed Moscow Raceway hosted the 4th meeting of the season. In race 1, Ladijin sprinted from pole to take the lead from Bragin, Kalmanovic and Mityev. As the field negotiated turn 1, Anton Nemkin spun and Kalmanovic was punted off. They both retired. 2 laps into the race and Klim Gavrilov spun after this contact with Rustam Kudinov. For Ladijin, this was his 3rd win of the season. Reigning champion Dmitry Bragin settled for 2nd position, while Ladijin's teammate Mikhail Mityev completed the podium. Maslenikov finished 4th, Burlutsky 5th and Luka Chavich 6th. In race 2, Andrei Radoshnov started from pole position on the reversed grid in his Carville Racing Audi Rs3 Lms and led the way ahead of Alexi Duducarlo, while Gavrilov had a slow start from 4th and dropped behind the Hyundai of Luka Chavich. On lap 8, the battle at the front heated up as Gavrilov dived down the inside of Duducarlo and took 2nd, with the Lukoil Racing Team driver picking up a puncture, and a lap later he was forced to retire. This promoted his teammate Maslenikov to 3rd. On lap 15, the penultimate lap, Gavrilov attacked Radoshnov and made a clean move for the lead. Radoshnov tried to fight back at the final corner, but in doing so lost speed through the turn and allowed Maslenikov up the inside. Gavrilov was first to take the checkered flag, but was given a 3-second time penalty for making contact with Alexi Duducarlo. The penalty dropped Gavrilov from 1st to 4th, and so Andrei Maslenikov inherited the victory, while Andrei Radoshnov and Luka Chavich moved into 2nd and 3rd respectively. In the championship standings, Ladijin now has a clear gap with 32 points over Mityev and Bragin. Takuro Shinohara claimed a comfortable victory in TCR Japan's first race at Twin Ring Motegi. This was the 2nd win of the season for the Hitotsuyama racing driver after the victory he scored in the season opener at Sugo. Reigning champion Takeshi Matsumoto tried to chase Shinohara in the first part of the race, but then he lost contact and had to defend his 2nd position from Ryo Shimono during the last lap. The Drago Racing lady driver finished 3rd, claiming her first podium result in the championship. In the second race, Takeshi Matsumoto, the reigning champion of TCR Japan's Sunday Series, scored an outstanding win that opened the season after the cancellation of the first race at Sugo. For the whole 11 laps, Matsumoto put on a great defensive drive to keep at bay Takuro Shinohara, the Saturday Series race winner. The pair delivered a thrilling fight and made contact several times. The scrap heated up during the 2 final laps, when Matsumoto's Volkswagen Golf and Shinohara's Audi ran abreast, swapping paint 2 or 3 times. Matsumoto didn't give up and crossed the finishing line 1 second ahead of Shinohara, with Shimono completing the podium and Shioya 4th. The IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge raced at the Virginia International Raceway for the 4th round of the season. The Hyundai domination in the TCR class seems endless. For the 3rd consecutive round, the Veloster N cars filled the podium as Mason Philippi and Michael Lewis won the 2-hour race. It was a family fight between the Brian Herter Autosport teams, as Philippi and Lewis were closely followed by their teammates Michael Wilkins and Harry Gottsacker, and Parker Chase and Spencer Brockman, who finished in 2nd and 3rd positions respectively, completing the 2nd consecutive 1-2-3 finish for the team. Gabby Chavez and Ryan Norman, the winners of the previous event at Road America, provided the icing on the cake for Brian Herter Autosport, as they finished 5th behind the Honda Civic of Matt Pombo and Mike Lamara.
Good job, man. Good job, Michael.
Wilkins and Gottsacker have retained the leadership in the standings, and they're just now 7 points ahead of Lewis and Philippi.
Very impressive. Mark's not an easy man to hold on.
That was Inside the World of TCR Episode 16, the 2nd of 2020. TCR action all around the globe is getting more and more intense. We'll be back before the end of September with the debut of the World Series WTCR, some more TCR Europe action, and plenty of national TCR series. But for now, goodbye.